Okay, step 3 to understanding how to manage prolapse symptoms whilst doing the kettlebell swing is to talk about the main muscle groups that we're using whilst doing the kettlebell swing. So they are the prime movers that we're using whilst doing this exercise, and they are our glutes and our hips. A lot of times I see or I hear stories about lower back injuries with the kettlebell swing, and of course if you have prolapse symptoms, you're probably a lot more susceptible to that. Mainly because there is no strength happening in the glutes and the hips. You haven't built up strength there, and of course you're still rehabilitating your deep core stability system. So you're still working out how to get your diaphragm and your pelvic floor to move together. You're still working out how to engage that transverse abdominis, and of course you're trying to strengthen the multifidi down through your lower back. So often what happens when we use the wrong muscle groups, or perhaps we're not using the wrong muscle groups, but because the muscle groups that are intended for the exercise are not strong enough, then we compensate into other areas. So when we have a weak core and pelvic floor, and we have weak glute and hips, we often then tend to take the kettlebell swing into our lower back. So we need to make sure that we are strengthening those areas first. And the way to do that with the kettlebell swing is just to focus on the hip hinge first before adding load. Then once you start adding some load, add it gradually so that you can manage your form and technique with the swing and a little bit of load before you add more and more and more. It's the same with any exercise that you do in your training. You need to make sure that you progress safely and that you can do the recommended sets and reps with good form before adding more load. So let's just have a look here at the kettlebell, the hinge or the kettlebell swing and the prime movers. So we are using our hip muscles. So we've got our big TFL on the side here, we've got our glutes, and at the top, so at the back, my glutes are engaged, yeah. My lower back, my multifidi are engaged, yeah. And at the bottom also, my transverse abdominis is engaged. As I come up, I'm going to contract my glutes, and I'm going to contract my hip flexors as well. So the front and the back are playing in this space, all right? So we need to make sure that we are strengthening here and strengthening here. We're focusing that muscle connection on these muscles, not our lower back. So as I come up, I want to engage here. I want to squeeze my pelvic, my glutes. I'm exhaling and bringing my transverse abdominis in. I'm stopping myself from overextending by engaging these strong psoas muscle all through the front of my hips. I'm engaging my quads to stop myself from overextending. So as I come up, I squeeze my legs and I snap my knees. I say snap my knees, but it's more that the quads are contracting here. So we go. Now if I let that loose and I just turn it into a swingy movement rather than a hip thrusting movement, then I'm going to take it into my lower back. As you can see, it comes like this, as opposed to a snap and thrust. Snap and thrust. That's it, thrust and snap. Good. So that's another area I see as a fault when we're learning kettlebell swings. We're not engaging the right muscles, and then we're compensating into other areas. So when we're loose all through here, the only other muscle that can take any tension here is in the lower back. We don't want that. We want to make sure that we engage and we thrust, contract, 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 and protect the lower back. That's another way that you can manage prolapse symptoms whilst learning the kettlebell swing.